Hi everybody, Brian here again to look at another issue of GamePro magazine. This is the start of the 1994 run, or issues. This is GamePro issue number 55 from February 1994. This is when I started getting it monthly, I believe. Maybe not, I believe so, though. But I have issue number 54, but the cover's missing, so I decided to skip to 55. So, and you'll find a lot of GamePro magazines, the cover is missing on them. And that's because they were stapled together. That's the bad thing about it. But we'll get started here. You see on the front, the stars of 1993. Super Empire Strikes Back. For the Super Star Wars trilogy on the Super Nintendo. Super Street Fighter II. The Street Fighter II craze was in full effect, causing the fighting game craze. Claymates. Jam It Basketball, Joe Montana's NFL Football, Fatal Fury Special for SNES, Mortal Kombat 2, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Ground Zero, Texas, Star Trek The Next Generation, Dragon's Lair, The Fighter's Edge. That was a whole section about fighting games, because in the mid-90s, fighting games were everywhere. And his Pro Strategy Guide for Eternal Champions, which I still hope I have. So let's get started here. I'll just move it here. And put it in frame here. I'll get started. Speed Racer. Never played that game. Didn't know there was one on the Nintendo, Super Nintendo. Lufia. My friend had this game. Great little RPG. Picked it up. Haven't had a chance to play it, but I remember watching him play it. Very animated. Very cool, colorful graphics. Of course, you've seen this ad 1,000 times. You'll find a lot of ads repeat. Here's the contents. Of course, you got letters to the editor from people. The mail, cutting edge, like technology coming out in gaming. Player's Choice Awards for 1993. Hot at the Arcade segments. And of course, during that time, Mortal Kombat 2, Super Street Fighter 2. Pro reviews for Genesis, Super Nintendo, 3DO, Neo Geo, Game Boy, Game Gear. Special features, Eternal Champions Pro Strategy Guide, the sports pages, and the Role Players Realm sections. Wrestling game, Rage Cage for Sega CD. Here's some more contents. GamePro Labs, SWAT Pro, Secret Weapons and Tactics, which is like classified information for Nintendo Power. The Fighter's Edge, Short Pro Shorts. Quick look at some hot games. Overseas Prospects, Phantasy Star 4. Dragon Quest 1 and 2 for the Super Famicom, and Pro News. Here's some trading cards, which trading cards were still big. They had X-Men trading cards by Fleer. And here is a little section from the editors about bringing the new. They're talking about what will come into 1994. They're talking about new systems, 3DO, Amiga CD, CDI, Sports Illustrated Championship Baseball and Football, Aero the Acrobat. I believe he had 2 games for the Super Nintendo and Genesis. Letters to the editor. And here's Lethal Enforcers. They're talking about video game violence. Lethal Enforcers is one up there. Time Killers, which I remember that game in the arcade. I think there was a Genesis port. I'm not 100% sure. Mortal Kombat. Kirby. See here. That is NHL 94. Here you go, reader's report, and here's some envelope art. And I always thought that guy, doesn't that guy look like Tony Hawk a little bit? Well, maybe not from here, but upside down, looking at him, he kind of does. So here we go, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Philips CDI again. So they're talking about the CDI. system. It had a mouse attachment, a trackball. There's Link Faces of Evil. Another ad. Here is the Choice Awards, Editor's Choice Awards. We'll take a closer look into this section. So, for Super Nintendo Game of the Year, Super Empire Strikes Back won it. Super Nintendo runners-up, you had Mortal Kombat and Super Street Fighter II Turbo. So two fighting games were runners-up in 94, or 93, which is kind of surprising because 93 was a very, very good year in games. So just to show that two fighting games were runners-up was just to show you how big the fighting game craze was back then. Genesis Game of the Year, we had Disney's Aladdin. Good choice. That game was just mesmerizing to watch with the hand-drawn animation put into the game. Handheld Game of the Year, Mortal Kombat for Game Gear. Handheld runners-up, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. That must be a typo. Yeah, that's definitely a typo. I was like, what? Link to the Past? No, they mean Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. So you can see they put Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past there. So that's why I was a little confused. So I found a typo in a 20-some-year-old magazine. Yay. Star Wars by US Gold was also the Game Gear gaming handheld runner-up. For Genesis game runners-up, you had Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter II Special Championship Edition. The game that really made the 6-button control pad a must for the Genesis. Okay, for NES Game of the Year, Kirby's Adventure. One of the later releases on the NES, because this was around 94, 93, so the NES was kind of dying down a little bit. Still being played, but the Super Nintendo was really gearing up. Rescue Rangers 2 and Mega Man 6 were the runners-up. CD Game of the Year, Sonic the Hedgehog CD. Runners-up, Lords of Thunder for the Turbo Duo, and Sylpheed for the Sega CD. Fighting Game of the Year, Samurai Showdown, SNK, Neo Geo for the MVS. Fighting Game runners-up, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter II Turbo, and Street Fighter II Special Championship Edition. Action Adventure Game of the Year, Flashback. And runners-up, Mega Man X and Super Empire Strikes Back. So you can see, really, it's funny to look back on these and see which games are more praised than the winners. Flashback, I haven't played it. I heard it's a great game. Mega Man X is a great game, and Super Empire Strikes Back is a great game. Looking at all these games, it seems that the majority of people really praise Mega Man X and Super Empire Strikes Back, and then Flashback in that order. But I could be mistaken. Sports Game of the Year, NHL Hockey 94. Great choice. The early NHL 90s series were just amazing games. I think the NHL games lost a little something being totally realistic. I played one recently and they're fun, but there's just something about pixel art hockey players running around. It's just great. Best shoot 'em up game, Star Fox. No surprise right there. I remember getting this game, and it looked amazing at the time. Doesn't look great now, but just for what it did, very fun gameplay. Arcade shooter. On-rail shooter. Viewpoint by SNK for the MVS. Now, I never played this, because I never really got into Neo Geo much. It was kind of expensive, and there was not an MVS around when I was a kid in my local arcade. Lords of Thunder for the Turbo Duo. Role-playing Game of the Year, Secret of Mana. Awesome choice. And the runners-up were Luthia for the SNES and Shadowrun for the SNES. Strategy Games of the Year. We have Super Bomberman 1, Bomberman 93 for the Turbo Duo, and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Green Machine were all runners-up. Educational Game of the Year, Simman. Runners-up, Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego, and Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, both for the SNES. Here's the Lethal Enforcers. You see the Justifier there. Hot at the Arcade, Super Street Fighter 2, The New Challengers. Even then they're saying, what's wrong with Street Fighter 2? Here it is. It got pretty good scores, 4.5 out of 5 across the board. Oh, there we go. See if I can zoom out a little bit. There we go. The AMOA, Amusement Machine Operators Association. That was like a trade show, or a show that everybody would show off the latest in pinball and arcade machines and Bonk's Adventure. You see here Cyber Sled, some pinball machines, Ridge Racer, sit-down cabinet, Punky Doodle, Judge Dredd, Star Trek: The Next Generation, Raiden 2, or Raiden 2, however you pronounce it. Last Action Hero pinball game. Here's an ad for the good old Atari Jaguar. Still would like to get a Jaguar someday. I have some games. Don't have a Jaguar though. Sonic 3. This is a pro review of it. You see it got 3 pages. And I don't know if they actually scored it. Unless I'm missing a page, I don't see any scores for it. Nope. Ad for Mega Man X. And I remember when X came out, I never had it as a kid, but kind of seeing it and being disappointed because I wanted like the 8-bit traditional style Mega Man, and it was really, really different. But looking back on it now, it was a great change to the series. Goofy's Hysterical Tour. Wow, that got pretty good reviews. 4.5, 4, 4.4, 4.5. They really liked it, looks like. The Lost Vikings. Interplay. I thought Blizzard actually developed it. Maybe published by Interplay. Gunstar Heroes, they really liked it. Got 4, 4, 5.0, 5.0. I would like to find Gunstar Heroes. I saw it once and didn't get it, and I should have picked it up because I've never played it. Cosmic Spacehead. Yeah, I never understood what this thing was as a kid. Why tape an index card inside your magazine? The Incredible Crash Dummies. I actually have this for the Super Nintendo. Pretty average game. Dragon's Revenge. This I saw, funny, I was looking at games and I saw this in the store and it was a pinball game. And I think it was $8. I didn't want to spend $8 on it. And kind of average. High Seas Havoc. Looks like a platform game. Like there was a ton of them back then. Here we have, I'm going to zoom in a little bit again. Here we have a $10 off KB store toys for Sonic the Hedgehog. And it expires February 28th, 1994. So I'm a little late to that. Are KB's toys even are still around? There was one in my mall I haven't noticed lately. Stimpy's Adventure for the Genesis. Got pretty good reviews, actually. 4.5s across the board, except for Control, which got 4.0. Battle Cars for the Super Nintendo. I've never heard of that game or played that game. Castlevania Bloodlines. I've been looking to get this game for a long time, and it's recently spiked up in value. My friend let me borrow it once, and a fun game, fun Castlevania game. The music, it's everything about it's Castlevania. Subterranea. This game it's very hard for me to control though, and I don't put enough time in it to get good at it, but if you've ever played Subterranea, you know what I mean. Star Trek The Next Generation for Genesis. And here's the Eternal Champions Pro Strategy Guide. Beyond Shadowgate for the Turbo Duo. I almost picked up a Turbo Duo once. I tested it out in the store. They wanted $200 for it. But the problem with the Turbo Duo, as many know, is the sound chip. The capacitors that handle the sound audio will cause either the CD audio to be very light. I tried it out and it had that problem, and I could fix it easily enough just by buying capacitors and soldering it, but for $200 I didn't want to spend that money on it just to do work on it, if you understand what I mean. But eventually, hopefully, I will get a Turbo Duo, or maybe just a TurboGrafx 16. It's next on my list of stuff to get. And I love Shadowgate for the Nintendo. And if this is, I don't know if this is a sequel to it or whatever, I haven't really researched it. But this is the Turbo Duo Super CD-ROM game. Tournament Fighters for the Genesis, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. And that is the other part of that little index card I told you about. So that it would stay in the magazine, they bend it through and stapled it. And this is a coupon from Konami for Rocket Knight, for some games that you see Sparks throwing here. You can get 10 or some money off Rocket Knight Adventures, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, or Tiny Toons Adventures. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighter. Toe Jam and Earl Panic on Funkatron. Bram Stoker's Dracula. Mad Dog McCree and Johnny Rock. I have both of these games. I think for the Sega CD I have Johnny Rock, Who Shot Johnny Rock, and for the 3DO I have Mad Dog McCree collection 1 and 2. Full motion video games at their finest, that's for sure. WWF Rage in a Cage. A lot of wrestling games back then because the WWF was really huge. Dragon's Lair for the Sega CD. Preview games, Ground Texas Zero, Jurassic Park, Prize Fighter, Double Switch. These are all for the Sega CD. Here's an ad for the 3DO, and the 3DO was amazing at the time, just a little too pricey for me. I did have a friend who had one. I used to go over to his house a lot and play it. He had Street Fighter 2, a lot of games for it. Guardian Wars, one of the only RPGs for it. The Horde with Kirk Cameron. Road Rash, which was amazing. Twisted, the game show game. Lots of good games. Lots of games for 3DO I remember playing. And here's Lunar, the Silver Star Story. I've never played this game. I see it for the PlayStation all the time. I would like to get it for the Sega CD, though. Here's the Pro Strategy Guide for Super Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. Here's some ads for some Konami Game Boy games. Third Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the Game Boy. Didn't know that was out. Radical Rescue. Pro review for the Super Nintendo. T2, the arcade game. Claymates. Super Battle Tank 2. And Zool. Mario's Time Machine. I've seen this in the stores, but I never did pick it up. I have no idea what it's about. And looking at the scores, it's not very good. It's just a beginning adventure game. A beginner educational game. Sunset Riders. I love this game in the arcade. Put lots of quarters in it, and I remember renting the Super Nintendo version a lot from my local video store. And I did, in the past year or so, pick it up for the Super Nintendo. And the Super Nintendo port is very, very much like the arcade port. The Sega Genesis one is a little different than the arcade port. But they're both good games in their own right. Here's a Codemaster ad for Fantastic Dizzy, Cosmic Space Head, Dino Basher, and Micro Machines. Metal Marines, which I've never played. See, looking through these, you find a lot of games that you never played, and you'd like to see. You'd like to play. If you go to stores, you say, "Oh, I remember seeing that in GamePro," and there you go, you pick it up. Because now, instead of spending $50 on it, it might be $5 or $6. You know. Stellar 7, Draxon's Revenge, and here's Dragon Strike. I remember getting this game, and there was a cheesy video that came with it. I actually posted the movie of it on my YouTube. And it's very, very cheesy. Mad Dog McCree. Full motion video game. Young Merlin. Escape from Monster Mansion for the 3DO. And here we go, the Neo Geo. Fatal Fury Special. Sports pages. Here's an ad for the Atari Lynx. I would like to get a Lynx as well. And here we go, the Role Players Realm. This was my favorite section by far of the magazine. I used to be really, really big into role-playing games back in the 16-bit days. Not so much anymore, but I do pick up role-playing games every once in a while. I just rarely finish them anymore, which is a shame, and I need to fix that problem. But here's Dungeons & Dragons Tower of Doom. This was an arcade game, like a beat-em-up with RPG elements. I did play it once or twice, I remember, and it was really good. It would be one of the arcade machines I would like to get, but I think it's kind of expensive to find. That or one of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or Konami classic fighting games like Simpsons, X-Men, those kind of games. I think Konami did those as well. Could be mistaken. Paladin's Quest for the Super Nintendo. Romance of the Three Kingdoms 3. Dragon of Destiny. Shadowrun for the Super Nintendo, for the Genesis. If I recall, I never played the Genesis version, but I think it's different than the Super Nintendo one, which the Super Nintendo one was just a straight up more RPG-ish. Well, I shouldn't say more RPG-ish because I never played the Genesis one. Arcus Odyssey and Ultimate Ruins of Virtue for the Game Boy. Bart and the Beanstalk for the Game Boy. Never heard of that game. X-Men for the Game Gear. Battletoads for the Game Gear. Didn't know it was on the Game Gear. Dr. Robotnik's Mean Green Bean Machine. And Gearworks for the Game Gear. Hook. Funny, I saw that in my video game, one of the video game stores I frequent, and I didn't pick it up. But if it's back there next time, I might pick it up. Because the one for Super Nintendo is pretty fun. Desert Speed Trap, starring Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote for the Game Gear. I had Roadrunner's Death Valley Rally on the Super Nintendo, and I remember loving that game. Even though, because I was really big into Looney Tunes. I still love Looney Tunes. I think it's one of the best cartoons ever made. They hold up immensely well, even if you watch them today. And I love that game, and even though the controls were floaty, but there was just something about it, because Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote were my favorite of the Looney Tunes. Chuck 2, Son of Chuck. Deep Duck Trouble, starring Donald Duck. Here's some great software, etc. coupons. Secret of Mana, $3 off. Yoshi's Cookie, Sky Blazer. GamePro Labs. You have this little mini arcade thing for your Game Boy that turns it with a light and joysticks. 6-button arcade stick for the Genesis, or the Genesis and Sega CD. This looks like a contest for the X-Men game. Grand prize, 1 Genesis Core System, Sega CD system, any 5 Sega cartridges of your choice, 3-volume set of X-Men home videos, Marvel Masterworks hardcover collection of 10 premium comic books, Volume 3, 7, 11, and 12. 1 GamePro magazine subscription. Here's SWAT Pro. You see tips for Aladdin for Genesis, Shinobi 3, Ranger X, Zombies Ate My Neighbors, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Tough Enough, Zombies Ate My Neighbors again, Lords of Thunder, Mortal Kombat, The Fighter's Edge. Back in the early 90s, they had so many fighting games that they had their own section, just like role players around sport pages. Super Street Fighter 2, The New Challengers. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Tournament Fighters. And here they actually ranked all the players in Super Street Fighter 2 and gave them a number. So, reverse each other. So, Guile versus Guile, it's a stalemate. Sagat versus Sagat, stalemate. But you have Guile versus Sagat, and they give you a 4.5. And you could do basically crossover and see who paired up better against each other. Excuse me. Kind of interesting concept. They have power rankings here. Oh, look, Joe Montana as a Chief. I remember that. But this is NFL Football 94. Short Pro Shots. Stitchin', Fireteam Rogue, Brutal, Family Feud, Alfred Chicken, John Madden Football for the 3DO, Bubsy 2, Rocco's Modern Life, Super Wing Commander, Thomas the Tank Engine. Coming out in February of 1994 for the Super Nintendo. Let's see if we find any classics on here. Alfred Chicken, Bugs Bunny Rabbit Rampage, Claymates, Star Trek The Next Generation, Time Tracks, and Wolfenstein 3D. For the 3DO, you had Sewer Sharks, Neo Geo Art of Fighting 2, and Top Hunter, NES, Alfred Chicken, Turbo Duo, TurboGrafx, Sid Mead's Terraforming, Game Boy, Alfred Chicken, Game Gear, Caesar's Palace, Genesis, Bubble and Squeak, Caesar's Palace, Family Feud, Incredible Hulk, Jammin' Basketball, Lost Vikings, Romance of the Three Kingdoms 2, 3, and for the Sega CD, Mansion of Hidden Souls. Overseas Prospect, Phantasy Star 4. And here we see the compilation for the overseas for the Super Famicom, Dragon Quest 1 and 2, all on one Super Famicom cartridge. Dragon Quest series, I love number 3, I love number 4. I beat them all. The ones I played and beat were 1, 3, 4, 7, and I'm playing still 8 and 9. And I'd like to go back and beat and play 2. And I heard 2 is one of the harder games in the series. Here we get Pro News. Anything interesting here? Super Mario All-Stars. They're talking about number 1 choice to give as a gift is that game. Other games in your future, Samus Aran's adventures are far from over. The Metroid hero of the SNES and Game Boy is coming to the Super Nintendo early this year in Super Metroid from Nintendo. And after that, they talk about Beavis and Butthead. Well, yeah, I see that stick all the time. I will get that stick sometime, the Super Advantage. So yes, everybody, thanks for watching this look at GamePro issue number 55 from February of 1994. And I hope everybody has a great holiday, great Christmas, and I will talk to everybody again. This is Brian. Bye.